Laos is a landlocked country in the center of Southeast Asia, and for too long it has been overlooked by tourism, but it is an absolute hidden gem. We have lived here for 2 years and we have been coming back to visit ever since. If you're looking for a travel destination a little bit different but you've never been here before, this is 15 things that we think you should know before coming to Laos for the first time. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the customs. Laos is a Buddhist country. It's a lot more reserved, so you shouldn't really walk around in bikinis or topless. If you're at a waterfall or swimming somewhere, it's completely fine, it's not a problem. But if you're going into more public places, we would definitely recommend putting a top on. It's most likely that no Lao people are going to say anything to you about this or tell you to do something, but they're probably not appreciating it, so just cover up if you're in a public space. Another way in which Lao people are really polite is in their driving. So Lao people will rarely be beeping on the road or getting road rage. It's actually seen as losing face, and getting angry is really frowned upon when driving. So if you're driving in Laos on a motorbike or car, try and avoid beeping as much as possible. I would say if you're in a dangerous situation, you could beep, or if you feel like it's absolutely necessary, but if it can be avoided, then it should be. Another custom in Laos is no public displays of affection. So if you're walking around Laos, don't be kissing in public or holding hands. It's really not done by locals, so try and avoid that if you can as well. Even though the customs seem quite reserved and a little bit strict in a way, the Lao people themselves are actually super relaxed. Usually you'll see groups of Lao people all the time drinking beer, chilling. They're super friendly, super welcoming, really kind, and they're also some of the most honest people that we've met. I think it's probably one of the countries that we've felt safest in on our travels. We've never really experienced any scams or dishonesty here while we've been traveling. I'm not saying that that can't happen, obviously that can happen anywhere, but in terms of traveling around Southeast Asia, this has felt like the safest country for us so far. The third thing you should know about Laos before coming here is the Borpenyang attitude. So if you've never heard of Laos, you probably have no idea what this means. Borpenyang basically means no worries in Lao, and it's kind of embedded in the culture here. Lao actually has a really rough history, and it is one of the poorest countries in Southeast Asia, but what we've noticed is that people are always smiling, they always have a positive attitude, even in the worst situations imaginable and possible, and that's one of the things that we love most about this country. There is also another side to this whole Borpenyang attitude, which is not so positive. It's something that can be quite annoying for tourists in particular, which is that things are not rushed to be done. So if you're taking public transport, it is most likely not gonna leave on time. So just don't get mad at the situation. Things are just gonna happen in Lao time. It's a different time zone. It's gonna go a bit slower, but you'll get there in the end. There's no rush, there's no worries. So our first thoughts of the country Laos, before we'd ever heard of it really or been to it or knew anything about it, was that it was just jungle and nothing else there, which is completely not true. A lot of people think that there is no development here, but Laos has actually been changing rapidly over the past few years. Since we arrived here in 2020, so many things have changed. We've seen the first highway being built here, new roads constantly being built all the time, and the first railway, high-speed railway here, all the way from Vientiane to China. The internet connection is actually really good here in Laos, especially with the local SIM cards. It's not just like you're in the middle of a jungle and there's no connection. It's actually some of the best internet we've found in Southeast Asia, to be quite honest. There's also loads of popular international chains that have just recently opened up in Laos. They've got the first Starbucks here, and they've also just opened up 7-Eleven here as well. So international brands are starting to move into Laos, and I think there's only going to be more and more in the future. So the next thing we're going to talk about is transport and how to get around Laos. Laos actually has quite a few airports, so if you wanted to fly between cities and get around faster and see quite a lot of places in a short amount of time, that would be the best way to do it. Internal flights can be quite expensive and add up, so if you're not wanting to do that, the next best thing would probably be the Lao-China train. It stops off in all the main places: Vientiane to Vang Vieng, Lang Prabang, Loang Nam Tha, Udom Sai. That's probably the most comfortable and convenient way to get around, but if you're wanting to kind of get off the tourist trail and you wanted to travel in a cheaper way, the cheapest way would definitely be to take just local buses or minivans. There is also overnight buses that you can take across Laos, so if you're doing a long distance from like the center all the way to the north or the center all the way to the south, they do have those. I wouldn't say they're the most comfortable. I don't really know what you're going to get when you go with that, but it's all part of the experience, right? And it's cheap, so what more can you ask for, really? If you're wanting to experience Laos to the fullest, we actually recommend just renting or getting your own motorbike or car, because there's a lot of places in Laos where it's just a lot easier to do it with your own transport. So if you're wanting to explore places like the Takek Loop or the Paksay Loop in the south, the best way is to do it with your own transport, because you can go to all the little hidden gems along the way, along the route. And a lot of people tend to skip this as well, which is a shame because they're some of the most beautiful places in Laos. If you do decide you want to explore Laos on your own with your own vehicle, you need to know about the road conditions. Around most tourist areas, the roads are pretty good and they're all built up, but if you're wanting to venture off a bit more, the roads can get pretty dangerous. There can be a lot of potholes and they might not be fully built up. So if you're not a confident or experienced driver, we would definitely not recommend driving in Laos to the less touristy areas. We've seen accidents, we've seen landslides, we've driven on some of the worst roads imaginable here, which you can see in our travel documentary when we drove from the southernmost point of Laos all the way to the north at the China border to get an idea of what the roads are like. We also actually have a 150-page ebook which covers all of the places we visited in Laos, things to do there, places to stay, places to eat, ways to get around, do's and don'ts, travel phrases, festivals you should go to, the best time to visit Laos, all kinds of stuff is in that book. And if you want to check it out, we'll put a link in the description below because it could really help you plan your trip and find some hidden gems that not many other tourists have been to. Let's talk about the visa. You're probably going to be getting the visa on arrival. This costs $40 US and you can pay for the visa fee in dollar, you can pay for it in Thai baht and I think Lao kip as well. But we would actually recommend only paying for the visa in US dollars because I think if you pay for it in Thai baht, the exchange rate actually it ends up being about $10 more than what it is. So make sure you have US dollars when you come into Laos. Make sure that the notes are crisp and clean, otherwise they won't accept them. Make sure you have the exact amount in dollars as well, just in case, and also make sure you have a little passport photo with you because they might ask for that when you fill out the visa on arrival form. Also, if you're coming from a land border from Vietnam into Laos, you might want to actually check with that land border checkpoint that you can actually do a visa on arrival because some of them only allow for the e-visa, which you need to get in Hanoi or a major city before you come to Laos. So you got your visa, you've entered the country, usually the next thing that you want to do is find a way to get some money if you haven't already got some on you to exchange. If you want to exchange the money, we would recommend only exchanging what you're going to need, so don't over exchange, because exchanging Lao kip back into a different currency, you're actually going to end up losing money because the Lao kip isn't that strong at the moment. If you wanted to use an ATM, the ATMs that we would recommend using are BCell, I think is the most popular, and JDB Bank. The ATM fees are actually quite cheap here in Laos. It's about 20 to 30,000 kip at the moment, which is I think $1. That's a lot cheaper than neighboring countries like Thailand, which is like $7 a time to withdraw money. But actually the withdrawal limit in Laos is a lot lower, so the most we could take out is about 2 million kip a time. Sounds like a lot, but it's actually maybe less than $100. So it kind of works out the same as Thailand because their withdrawal limit is higher and the fee is higher. So after you've got your visa, your money, the third thing, the main three things you always need when you go to a country is, the third one is internet. So SIM cards in Laos. There's two main providers in Laos. I think it's Unitel and Lao Telecom. We've actually tried both and we would definitely recommend Unitel over any of the others. It's super easy to get a local SIM card. You can go to any phone shop and just ask for a Unitel card and ask them to help register it for you. Maybe go somewhere where they can speak English so you can explain what you're actually trying to do. It's really simple, and then you just buy these little scratch cards and you could top up however much you want. We usually get a 10,000 kip card, which is like 50 cents, and you get 5 gigabytes for 3 days with that. You can also get 30-day deals. It's up to you, depends on what you need it for and stuff, but it is really cheap to get internet here. And actually Unitel SIM cards are really fast. I've worked online, we've uploaded videos, and we've never had any issues. It's actually really, really fast. In terms of language, the national language here in Laos is Lao. It's quite similar to Thai actually, so if you speak Thai, then you could probably communicate the basics here and you'll get by just fine. However, English is only spoken in the main tourist areas, so if you wanted to go off the beaten path a little, we would definitely recommend either having a translator app with you or learning some basic Lao phrases. I actually included all the Lao phrases we used when we travelled from south to north in the book that were actually the most useful for us. Lao people really love it and respect it, and you'll get loads of smiles, and people will be even friendlier, if that's possible, if you speak a little bit of Lao with them. Lao is not necessarily known internationally for its food, but it is definitely some of the craziest and spiciest food that we have ever experienced in our travels. The main dish to try here is actually sticky rice. It's the main export of the whole country, in fact, and you can eat it with anything and everything, savoury and sweet. You can't come to Laos and not try sticky rice. It's almost a crime. Other dishes you should definitely try when you come are lab, which is the national dish here, and also papaya salad. It's a lot more potent than the Thai version because it includes fermented fish sauce, and it's way spicier, and it actually originated in Laos, so you're trying the original version. Also, make sure you try things like lang prabang sausage. Any barbecue meat in a market is pretty good. And there's also a lot of other crazy foods you can try as well, like raw blood salads and intestine soups. But don't worry guys, there is also Western and international food everywhere as well. You're gonna find everything you can find in any other countries as well. It's not like it's just you're stuck with raw blood salads every day. So for all the vegetarians and vegans out there, if you're coming to Laos, there is food for you, don't worry. In Vientiane, Lang Prabang, Vang Vieng, you'll find loads of veggie vegan restaurants and dishes directed at you in all the tourist areas. But if you are heading out off the beaten path, you are probably really going to struggle. When we went all the way up north, all the way to the China border, there were some areas where literally all there was to eat was buffalo. Like, we couldn't find chicken, we couldn't find pork. So even as meat eaters, we struggled. So if you are veggie or vegan, you would struggle out there as well. Or if you're just a fussy eater, you might struggle in rural areas. So just keep that in mind when you're planning where you want to go. So now let's talk about nightlife here in Laos. It's definitely not a country known for that. Like we said before, most people think it's just a jungle when you come here for the first time. There's not really any full moon parties like you would get in Thailand, but there is still parties. You can still have a good time here. There is actually a curfew at midnight across the whole country, so the streets do get really quiet. It's a national curfew. It's not strictly enforced, but most places do close by then. If you're in tourist areas like Vientiane, Vang Vieng and Don Det, the 4,000 islands down south, you'll definitely be able to find parties throughout the night. So there's two seasons here in Laos. There is the rainy season from May to October and the dry season from October to April. The best time to visit, we think, is actually right after rainy season from October to December, when the weather is the most dry and stable and the lagoons and waterfalls look their best. Another reason to go during October is also because there is the Light Festival during that time, which is one of our favorite festivals in Laos. And if you don't know what it is or you haven't seen it before, go and look it up. The best place to experience it is definitely in Lang Prabang. You'll thank us later. Another popular festival to witness is Lao New Year, which occurs at the same time as Thai and Cambodian New Year during April time. So dry season is the best time to visit, but keep in mind that it gets colder in the months of December to January, particularly in the north of Laos. There is also burning season to keep in mind as well, especially if you wanted to travel to the north of Laos, because it could impact your trip. This happens in, I think, around March time, sometimes February, just before Lao New Year. It can affect the visibility and the air quality pretty bad. It might depend on the year. Some years are worse than others, but definitely look that up and see what the situation is before you plan a trip, because it could affect it. Laos is a very affordable country to travel, and it can be done on as little as $15 to $20 a day on a budget for the basics per person, forgot to say. Based on our experience here as budget travelers, we spend around $10 a day for a basic private room in a guest house, but you can find as cheap as $5 a night for a basic bungalow in some areas. Dorms are around $5 a night on average, but accommodation is probably the most expensive in Vientiane and Lang Prabang. It is still affordable though, it's just maybe a few dollars more than other areas. In terms of food, if you wanted to eat on a budget, the cheapest place to eat would definitely be in markets. So there's loads of morning markets, loads of night markets everywhere, and the street food is super cheap. things like barbecue meat and sticky rice. If you want in a local meal from a simple restaurant, it's around $2, and if you want in Western food or something from a nicer restaurant, obviously it'll be a bit more, maybe around $5 to $10 a meal depending on how fancy the place is. Things like fruit shakes, beers and coffees are all around $1 to $2 each, so really cheap. They do come with sugar in if you don't ask though, so my biggest tip for you is bosai nam tan, which means no sugar. So say that if you ever want to get a fruit shake or a coffee without sugar. Public transport, this can vary, but the most affordable way to get around is by bus or minivan, like I said earlier. Motorbike rentals are around $5 to $10 a day for a simple scooter, depending on what area you're in as well. Accommodation, food, transport are the basics, and then the last one this is how we divide up our budget, is like activities and stuff. Most waterfalls, lagoons, hikes, viewpoints, or museums in Laos have a very small entry fees. They're around $1 to $2. You can easily see all the main attractions on a budget. If you want to do more adventurous or extreme activities like jungle treks, ethnic homestay experiences, hot air balloon rides, paragliding, all that kind of stuff, this will cost more, but they're still really affordable for the once-in-a-lifetime experience that you get. This truck, let me finish, okay? One of the main things you probably wanted to know if you come into Laos for the first time is actually where to visit. Where should you go? What should you do? What are the main places that we should see in Laos? So the main tourist areas are obviously Luang Prabang and Vientiane. Vientiane because it's a big major transport hub and it's the easiest way to get from place to place across Laos, and Luang Prabang because it's a UNESCO heritage site and probably one of the most popular tourist destinations in the country. There's also Vang Vieng, which has a lot of nature. It is supposedly known for its parties, but I would say there is a lot more to Vang Vieng than just parties. In fact, we rarely go there to party. We go there for the nature, so there is a lot to do there if you want in some quiet time as well in the nature. A couple of other popular tourist destinations are Nong Kiao, just above Luang Prabang, and Mung Noi as well. We've been to both of them and we definitely recommend them. Really beautiful views and hikes and just lovely villages in rural Laos to visit. Other places to consider in North Laos, a bit off the tourist path, would be Phang Saly. It's got a lot of different ethnic groups and you can do all kinds of experiences up there with tribes, and it was one of our favourite places in Laos actually. Other places would be Luang Namta, Pon Savan to see the Plain of Jaws, and in the south of Laos there is the Takek Loop, the Balavan Plateo Loop just by Paksay. There's Dondet, 4,000 Islands, and again we cover every single area that we're talking about right now in Laos in our ebook, which is in the description below if you want to plan an amazing trip around the country. So I hope this video helped you in planning a trip to Laos or just knowing a little bit about the country before you come here. There is honestly so much more I could tell you, but we've been recording for a while. The sun is actually about to go down, so we don't have much time. But yeah, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments below. We'll always reply to your comments. And we also have like 200 videos on Laos. We've been here for quite a while, so go and watch them, have a little look through, and give this video a like if it helped you. I'm actually so out of breath after filming this video. I've recorded so many things over and over because of the traffic. It keeps interrupting my vlogs like that. Another thing to watch out for if you're driving in Laos on the roads is trucks. They're everywhere.